Hello students, now we are going to start the seventh lecture of our chapter, that is natural resources. Now in this lecture we are going to study about the very first topic that we are going to look at is biogeochemical cycles. Now what are biogeochemical cycles? Biogeochemical cycles, these are the cyclic pathways. These are the cyclic pathways. These are cyclic pathways through which chemical elements move from environment to the organism. Through which through which chemical elements through which chemical elements move from environment move from environment to organisms and back to the environment and back to the environment and back to the environment. Now the earth and its environment, if we take the earth and its environment, if we take the earth and its environment with reference to these elements, with reference to these elements, if we take the earth and its environment with reference to these elements, these are considered as closed systems. Now these are considered as closed system the where the cycle flows like from environment to organism and back to environment. The cycle flows like this from environment to organism and back to the environment. Now that's why these are referred to as closed systems. Elements are considered as closed systems. Closed systems. And there is inflow of such elements, and inflow there is inflow of such elements from outside the earth, from outside the earth, and their amount is limited. The elements flow from outside the earth and their amount is limited. And their amount is limited. So these are called as biogeochemical cycles. These are called as biogeochemical cycles. Now we are going to look at a lot of biogeochemical cycles in this lecture, and the very first biogeochemical cycle is our very basic water cycle. Now, the very first biogeochemical cycle is the water cycle. We all know that water is the most abundant component. Water is the most abundant component abundant about 60 to 90%, about 60 to 90% abundant component of protoplasm. This is the most abundant component of protoplasm. It acts as a habitat for hydrophytes and many aquatic animals also. It acts as a hydrophyte. It acts as a hydrophyte and many aquatic animals and a habitat for many aquatic animals and habitat to many aquatic animals. A good ionizer, it's a good ionizer that if we put any substance in it, it will decompose it into ions. So it is a good ionizer. If we put any substance in it, let's say common salt we put in water, so it will decompose the common salt into ions, that is Na plus and Cl minus. It is a very good solvent. Water is a very good solvent. It is also a temperature buffer. It is a temperature buffer also. And it performs transportation of materials also. And it helps in digestion of it helps in digestion of organic compounds and in photosynthesis of plants and in photosynthesis of plants. It also helps in photosynthesis of plants. Now the main points are it acts as a hydrophyte, it is a habitat for many aquatic animals, and it is a temperature buffer, it is a good solvent, it is a temperature buffer, it is a good solvent, and it helps in digestion and photosynthesis. Now, how does water cycle work is that here is ocean, and from ocean the water evaporates, and here ocean the water evaporates. These are the arrows for the evaporation, and some it becomes clouds. So there is ocean precipitation and there is a land precipitation, and it comes back to the land only, and it goes back into groundwater, and from groundwater it goes back to oceans. So this is the cycle of water, that how the cycle of water works. On the rivers also, from rivers also, the water goes back to the oceans only, and this is how the water cycle works. Evaporated water gets converted into clouds, and the clouds precipitates and gets converted and gets back to the groundwater or in oceans only. Now, the next the next topic that we are going to look at is global water cycle. Now, what is global water cycle? Global water cycle, it does not involve living organisms. In global water cycle, it does not involve living organisms. It does not involve living organisms and involves the interchange of water and involve the interchange of water between the earth's surface and atmosphere. It only involve the interchange of water between earth's surface between Earth's surface and atmosphere. And atmosphere via the process of precipitation and evaporation. It happens, it happens via the process of precipitation and evaporation. Via the process of precipitation and evaporation. Now, as it doesn't involve any living organisms, it does not involve any living organisms. So, ocean is the biggest storehouse of water, we all know. Ocean, the maximum amount of water is in ocean. So, ocean is the biggest storehouse. We can say ocean is the biggest storehouse of water. Ocean is the biggest storehouse of water. And evaporation involves the conversion of liquid and solid into vapors. And here evaporation involves the evaporation involves the conversion of liquid into vapors. It involves the conversion of liquid into vapors, and in the formation, and vapors form the clouds, and later it form the clouds, and later these vapors will form the clouds, and later forms the clouds. Now, the second point is that precipitation involves the rainfall. Precipitation Precipitation and evaporation we are going to talk, and precipitation involves the rainfall, hail, snow and etc. Rainfall, hail, snow and etc. And the energy for the global water cycle is provided by sun, and the energy is provided by sun. Now, the next topic that we are going to look at is biological water cycle. Now, in global water cycle, it does not involve any living organisms, but in biological water cycle, it is the interchange of water. It is the interchange of water. It is the interchange of water between biotic and abiotic components of environment. Between biotic and abiotic components between biotic and abiotic components of environment. So it is that water cycle. The flow of water in a cycle is called as water cycle only. For example, we can take the example here. For example, the plants absorb water from water bodies. The plants will absorb water from water bodies As we all know that plants need water to grow and soil while loose. Now, animals also consume water from the water bodies or the food ingested, and they will release water while they will release water while they will release water by the process of transpiration. By the process of transpiration. So this is how the water cycle works in this is how the biological water cycle works, that plants will absorb water from water bodies and they will release the water in the form by the process of transpiration. Now the next topic that we are going to study about is nitrogen cycle. The next cycle that we are going to look at is nitrogen cycle. Now we are going to study about nitrogen. Nitrogen is an essential component of amino acids. We all know nitrogen is an essential component of amino acids. Nitrogen is a very essential component of amino acids, proteins, enzymes, also proteins, enzymes, nucleic acids, etc. And it is a reservoir pool. The reservoir pool of nitrogen is atmosphere, because in atmosphere maximum amount of nitrogen is present in atmosphere only. So the reservoir pool of nitrogen. The reservoir pool of nitrogen is atmosphere, which contains about 78% of nitrogen in the gaseous state. And atmosphere contains about 78% of nitrogen. About 78% of nitrogen in gaseous state. It contains nitrogen in gaseous state, and but it cannot be used directly, and is changed into nitrites and nitrates. But the atmospheric nitrogen cannot be used directly, but it cannot be used directly. It cannot be used directly and is converted into and is changed into and is changed or converted into nitrites or nitrates. Nitrites or nitrates is converted into nitrites or nitrates. And then it is utilized. So as you can see, there is atmospheric nitrogen, that is nitrogen in atmosphere, and it is converted and it is nitrogen fixation from protoplasm green plants. Then ammonification happens and it converts itself into ammonia, and then it converts itself into nitrites and nitrates, and with the process of nitrification and denitrification. So these are the steps and these are the process in the nitrogen cycle. Now we are going to study them one by one, that what are the steps of nitrogen cycle. Now the steps of nitrogen cycle, the very first step is nitrogen fixation. The very first step is nitrogen fixation. Now what happens in nitrogen fixation is that it involves the conversion of free involves the conversion of it involves the conversion of free diatomic nitrogen, that is N2, free diatomic nitrogen into nitrites and nitrates, into nitrites and nitrates, into nitrites and nitrates. Now it can occur in two ways. The very first, now it can occur in two ways, and then the next step of a nitrogen cycle is ammonification. Ammonification. Now, what happens in ammonification is that it involves the decomposition of proteins of dead plants. It involves the decomposition. It involves the decomposition of proteins of dead plants and animals. Dead plants and animals, and it involves the decomposition of proteins of dead plants and animals to ammonia. It converts them to ammonia, and that's why it is known as ammonification. So it converts them to ammonia in the presence of ammonifying bacteria, and it happens in the presence of a bacteria called as Bacillus ramosus. It's an ammodifying bacteria. It's an ammodifying bacteria, and it is called as Bacillus ramosus. It is called as Bacillus ramosus. Now, the next step of a nitrogen cycle is nitrification. The third step of a nitrogen cycle is nitrification. Now, what happens in nitrification is that it involves the oxidation of ammonia. Ammonia is created through ammonification. Now, it involves the oxidation of ammonia. It involves the oxidation of ammonia, and it converts them into nitrites and nitrates. Ammonia, and it converts them to nitrites. Nitrites are NO2 minus. These are NO2 minus and nitrates. And nitrates are NO3 minus. In the presence of a nitrifying bacteria, now what happens here is plants absorb the nitrites and nitrates. Plants absorb the nitrites, that is NO2 minus and NO3 minus, from the soil through their roots. They absorb from soil through roots, through roots and convert them into organic compounds and convert them into organic compounds like proteins, convert them into organic compounds like back to the organic compounds, that is proteins of protoplasm, and this process is called as nitrogen assimilation, and the last step in the nitrogen cycle is denitrification. And the last step is denitrification. Now, what is denitrification? In denitrification, it involves the reduction of ammonium compounds. The ammonium compounds are NO3 and NO2, so it involves the reduction of ammonium compounds. Here, oxidation is happening and it involves the reduction. It involves the reduction of ammonium compounds. It involves the reduction of ammonium compounds that are nitrates and nitrites to molecular nitrogen. That it converts nitrates and nitrites to molecular nitrogen, that is N2. To molecular nitrogen, it converts back them to molecular nitrogen, that is N2, that is nitrogen gas. And this happens with the bacteria, and with the help of a bacteria, called as Theobacillus denitrificans, called as Theobacillus denitrificans. Now, the next cycle that we are going to look at is carbon cycle. Now, what is a carbon cycle? The carbon is mainly present in atmosphere or in air in the form of CO2. And what happens here is, we all know that carbon is the basic component. Carbon is the basic component of all the organic compounds. Of all organic compounds. Carbon are the basic components of all organic compounds like carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, etc. Now in atmosphere, it is present in the form of carbon dioxide. In atmosphere, it is present in the form of, as carbon dioxide. It is present as carbon dioxide. It involves two types of processes. There are two types of processes, that is, we can involve two types of processes. The very first one is one involving CO2 utilization. One is involving CO2 utilization, and the other one involves and the other involves CO2, and the other one involves CO2 production. Now, what are the two processes? And we are going to talk about that. But here, how does carbon cycle work is CO2 from atmosphere. It is present in organic compounds of plants and organic compounds of animals. Now, organic compounds of plants are converted into coal, limestone, or carbonates, and organic compounds of plants are converted to petroleum and inorganic carbonates. And from this, when we burn these all products, then it is going to convert back into CO2. Now we are going to study about utilization and production. So CO2 utilization, CO2 utilization. CO2 is utilized by the photosynthetic organisms. CO2 is utilized. How does CO2, if CO2 is making in the environment, so how is CO2 utilized by the photosynthetic plants? Is utilized by photosynthetic plants or photosynthetic organisms. Photosynthetic organisms. Now, in the process of photosynthesis, it occurs in the presence of chlorophyll. It occurs in the presence of chlorophyll. Photosynthetic process occurs in the form of chlorophyll and sunlight. So these are the two main factors that are needed for CO2 utilization. And glucose synthesized in photosynthesis, and the glucose, that is the food that is synthesized in photosynthesis, synthesized in photosynthesis glucose synthesized in photosynthesis is used to synthesize other organic compounds, is used to synthesize other compounds, other compounds. Now the next is CO2 production. Now next is CO2 production. So we all know how CO2 production takes place. CO2 is released during respiration. We respire, so CO2 is released during respiration. All the living organisms, all the animals respire and they release CO2. During the decomposition of organic compounds, CO2 is also released during the decomposition. During the decomposition of organic compounds, during the decomposition of organic compounds, and it also released during burning of fossil fuels. We all know that carbon dioxide is released during the burning of fossil fuels like petrol, diesel, etc. So, but during the burning of fossil fuels and volcanic eruptions and hot springs also releases CO2. Volcanic eruption and hot springs also releases CO2. Volcanic eruption and hot springs also releases CO2. Now, The next one is oxygen cycle. Oxygen, we all know oxygen is present in water and forms 20% of air. Oxygen is present in water and it in air it is present and forms 20% of air and 20% of air. Now all living beings need it for respiration. All living beings, the very important and the very important characteristic of oxygen is all living beings need it. All living beings need it for respiration. Need it for respiration. And most of O2 is replenished by photosynthesis. Most of oxygen or O2 is replenished or renewed by photosynthesis. Because we all know that green plants consume CO2 and gives O2, so replenished by photosynthesis. It is replenished by photosynthesis, and during the process of photosynthesis, CO2 is used by plants. Now, then we are going to talk about how oxygen cycle is being converted. So, atmospheric oxygen goes through respiration and photosynthesis are the processes. Now, the oxides can be reduced. The oxides can be reduced both chemically and biologically. Both chemically and biologically. The oxide is being reduced both chemically and biologically to produce oxygen. To produce oxygen. Microbial oxidation can also occur. Microorganisms also occur, and microbial oxidation can also occur. Now, it also happens due to burning of materials, due to burning of materials. In burning of material, oxygen is required, so oxygen is convert oxygen from carbon dioxide, and it is when oxygen combines with nitrogen, it forms. The another use is when oxygen combines with nitrogen, it forms nitrogen oxides. It forms nitrogen oxides, or we can say oxides of nitrogen. It forms oxides of nitrogen, amino acids, proteins, etc. Now, with this, we are going to end the lecture here only, and thank you everyone.